The lands and seas of the world of Warhammer are vast, mighty, and dangerous. The planet is home to a large variety of amazing and frightening species, including many different creatures and beasts that lurk in caves, tunnel networks, and underwater passages. Creatures that roam the open fields or fly high above all others. What follows is the complete collection of works by the Doctor of Biology and Zoology of the University of Nuln, Steffan Hoffman. In this episode, we will embark on an unparalleled journey to explore the untamed corners of the Warhammer world. We will travel across continents and seas, where we will encounter beasts of legend and monsters of myth. We will witness firsthand the majestic Gryphons of the Empire, the terrifying hydras of dark elf infamy, the giant monstrosities of the Badlands, and so much more. We will adventure from the perilous peaks of the Grey Mountains to the faraway lands of Lustria, Ulthuan, Nehekhara, the Badlands, and beyond. We will finish our trip in the north, passing through the dangerous lands of Norsca until we reach the perilous Chaos Wastes, where we will face what destiny has for us. To kickstart our journey, we have managed to get ourselves a trip to the far continent of Lustria, where our adventures begin. We disembark at an Empire colony called Seaburg, or Port Reaver, recently raided by some kind of humanoid lizard and men hybrid. They are sure to be hungry for the supplies we have brought. Rumors say that the legendary hunter Marshal Marcus Wolfhart and his troops of veteran beast slayers pass through here from time to time, hunting and then bringing exotic creatures to be sold to the zoos back in the old world, or to be put to good use in different armies that the Empire has deployed across the world. If rumors prove to be true, then we should find a plethora of species to study here in Lustria.
So, you want to know if the stories are true? From someone who saw those wretched lands firsthand. Mates, they don't even do half the justice it deserves. Mountains of gold. Riches to settle you for a life 100. No. 1,000 times over. But with them, so are the risks. To possess those treasures, you'll have to venture into the belly of the beast. Face dangers unknown to men in a seemingly endless, hostile land. Predators like you have never seen before. Lizards capable of swallowing a knight and its steed whole. And tell me, what are you going to do with all your gold once they come for you? Who are you going to call for help where the ears and mouths of the Elector Counts can't reach? In my words, forget it. This is your chance to walk away. No one who's ever traversed the seas to reach that damnable place would ever come back to it. Not for fame, nor for adventure, and nor for all the golden riches on this earth.
Oh, but the rumors, they have truth to them, more than I expected. The town has a sizable menagerie of magical and bizarre creatures, and they are so interesting to my old world eyes, albeit the locals don't seem very keen on them, and many of them are quite dangerous. We arrive at the local exotic market, and it smells of so many spices that my nose doesn't quite know how to differentiate them. A bright orange animal catches my eye, for it growls and hisses at me with a hint of aggression. It resembles a mixture between a lizard and a gecko, albeit massive in size when compared to both. It is propelled by 4 thickly muscled legs, and has sails on its sizable head that appear to be some kind of strange display. When I spoke to the dealer who had the animal, he further explained that they are known as salamandras, and that the sails are supposed to be cooling mechanisms, for the creature is a fire breather. Unbelievable! How odd it is that multiple species have a similar mechanism for self-defense. Maybe I could study this convergence in depth with my few scholars of Nuln. I paid for a goat to be fed to the salamandra, who seemed to be somewhat trained and used to this kind of activity. The salamandra, let's call her Tigress, sniffs and growls at her prey before delivering a massive burst of a liquid so volatile it instantly bursts into flames, delivering a horrible death to the poor goat. It reminds me of the way that a dwarf's fire drake equipment works, which is remarkable indeed. While Tigress was feeding, her sails were on full display for cooling, and I could make out several distinct marks. I wonder if they are used for communication as well, for the dealer tells me that these are pack-hunting animals. The next creature we are going to study seems to be a mixture between a dog, a crocodile, and a particularly mad armadillo. This is called the Razordon, and following its name, it has a plethora of barbed spikes protruding out of its back, tail, and head. The dealer tells me that these beasts live on swampy land and feed on multiple cat-sized winged insects, like giant dragonflies and mosquitoes. So they are used sometimes as pest control and aren't the most aggressive towards humans. I get a first-hand demonstration of how these creatures hunt, and are definitely not hostile when one of them, shoved in a cage with others of its kin, shoots a barbed spike into my left leg. I'll call that one Dennis, because he sure is a menace. Approaching Dennis, I can see that it is quite hurt, for a piece of splintered wood is shoved in where one of the spikes should have been. Despite being told otherwise by pretty much everybody, I slowly approached Dennis and, with a swift movement, remove the piece of wood. It seems quite relieved. "This one won't shoot anybody else, I wager," I say to the dealer, who only grimly smiles. He then proceeds to explain how the spines of the Razordons are a devastating offensive weapon as well as a deterrent. Razordons have the ability to release their spines through strong muscle spasms, which send them flying outward in a devastating hail. No wonder why these are used in battle to devastating effects. The Razordon are driven into the enemy battle lines by the lizard men, who then encourage the monsters to fire a steady stream of spines into the opposing ranks, with enough force to break a shield or punch a clean hole through a man's torso. A single dart can be lethal. Even a creature that survives being struck by a Razordon spike is still in danger. Small barbs on each spine make sure that removing it causes even more damage and blood loss. High in the mountain tops of the Grey Mountains, we spot a piece of carrion. It seems that it once was an unlucky sheep, likely from a nearby farm. That, combined with the particularly foul smell, is a telltale sign that a wyvern's eyrie is nearby. Wyverns are almost completely blind, but have a powerful sense of smell. We mustn't get close, or so Mr. Grunny, the seldom seen Thoror, the dwarf ranger we hired as a guide, says. Getting just slightly closer, I can spot them with my spyglass, and what an odd creature. They look like a giant armored snake with 2 hind legs and 2 great leathery wings for arms. I can see now why people often think, from far away, that they just spotted a dragon. Indeed, 'tis a humble and distant relative of the elegant mighty creature. Mr. Thoreau tells me that night goblins often raid the nests of wyverns in search of eggs. In truth, they are almost as famous for going to war with the greenskins as they are for stealing the odd cattle, but it would be sheer stupidity to try and tame an adult wyvern. The sight of that silhouette high in the sky is a bad omen for dwarf, men, and elf alike, but for a tribe of greenskins, 'tis a sign that the gods favour them indeed. They mainly feed on mutton and each other. With their powerful wings, they are able to fly high and far, swooping down to the plains to steal food from others, or just to cause mischief. But according to Mr. Thoreau, there is such a thing as a cave wyvern, which lives deep underground. It is speculated that these creatures are rather smart, and they imprint on the first being that they see, whoever that might be, being able to serve as capable combat steeds. This particular specimen seems to be nurturing an open wound in their left hind leg. Mainly, the leg is missing its paw. From the looks of it, it was caused by a sharp beak of a hippogryph, their main rivals. I am told that the eggs of a wyvern sell for quite a high amount of teeth. This particular wyvern, that I have decided to call George, seems to be deep in their slumber. I will fill the nearby sheep carrion with healing salves and herbs. Maybe it'll help old George. We should let them be, but who knows? Maybe we could see them again someday. Goodbye, George. Sleep well. Mr. Thoreau doesn't understand how I can have sympathy for such creatures, but all living things are beautiful in my eyes. Dodging orc and goblin patrols, we come down the Grey Mountains as our expedition makes its way to Marienburg, home of the best sailors in all of the Empire. 'Tis there that we shall hire our next guides, a ship to sail us onto the high seas in order to study the elusive sea worm and sea drake. Saying goodbye to Mr. Thoreau, we use our last gold crowns to hire the services of Captain Alanar, the explorer Dory, an experienced elf sailor who owns a small but sturdy merchant fleet. The expedition will sail with them on their route to the New World colonies to sell supplies and exotic goods. We leave at first light tomorrow. The first days are uneventful, and I get to play cards with the sailors. Eventually, something bumps into the ship we are in. The Tor Garadon. And 'tis something quite big. Captain Dory quickly shouts, "Sea Drake!" His men repeat the words, and quickly the message spreads across the small fleet. They gather harpoons and pikes, wishing to fight the creature, but all I wish is to see it in all of its beauty. To that end, I fasten a pair of watertight goggles onto my eyes and a rope to my hip. My men hold the point of the rope, and I jump into the watery depth, just as the sea drake, with its monumentally big jaw, pulls one of the ships under the waves. The sea drake more resembled a sad worm of the salted waters than an actual dragon. Its toothy maw was uneven, and its body was disproportionately long, its legs being atrophiated into shy stumps, and its wings being bent into massive barbed fins. The creature looked directly at me, at my eyes, at my soul, and within it I could see suffering. It charged straight into me. But I was pulled back into the deck by none other than the Captain Dory, calling me names in both Elfarin and Reichspiel. I could barely understand either of them. The creature received multiple harpoon and pike wounds and fled, but it had dealt a heavy blow by dropping all of its precious cargo down into a watery grave. After everything had calmed down, I got to sit down with Captain Dory, and he explained to me the legend surrounding the sea drake. He told me that when the dreaded Dark Elves started the deadly war later called the Sundering, they corrupted many a noble dragon to their side. One such beast was struck down by a great elven hero, and it fell into the blue depths. With dark magic coursing through its veins, the salty water entered its wounds, and it changed it into the first sea worm. Apparently, as explained by the captain, sea worms and sea drakes are one and the same and descendants from this unlucky creature. 'Tis a tale I struggle to believe, and the scholars of Nuln have a much more pragmatic hypothesis. From what I have gathered from my research, Dark Elves regularly partake in mutating and evil experiments with dark magic upon their captured, brainwashed dragons. The sea drakes used to pull their grand black arcs, and are just one more of such experiments that happen to be stable enough to reproduce. Me and the captain agreed to disagree, and prayed to our respective gods that no such creature strike us again during the voyage. Later that day, I was getting ready to sleep, anxious in anticipation of the next stop we would visit. More creatures awaited us, more knowledge to be obtained. Deep in the histories of men, elves, and dwarves, there lies a single event that struck the entire world like a massive storm. It is said that like crackling thunder, the skies were split in twain by red, evil energies flowing, and man and beast were as one. With the breaking of the polar gates and the overwhelming flow of chaos, the race of beastmen came to be. But many other animals were also mutated. The energies that flow from the gaping wound in the north can warp and twist creatures, turning them into monstrous and terrifying abominations. These mutations can range from minor deformities to radical changes in the creature's physiology. All mutations are semi-random, one could say. What grants life its unending diversity is the environment's selection for certain ones. Advantageous mutations, like what happened to the beastmen, dreadfully selected to live, also happen to other beings, the hybrid animals that we are all now accustomed to. But I imagine that in the older days, one would be terribly frightened when seeing a mixture between raptor bird and equine. In the pursuit of further studies on those demi-animals, I travelled to the most remote places that money and courage would allow me to watch these magnificent creatures in their natural habitat. Taking advantage of my connections with the dwarfs of the mountains, I got myself a guide to take me through a hike on the World's Edge Mountains themselves. My dwarf guide, a gentleman named Bugman, allowed me the privilege of scaling a high mountain peak alongside him. Apparently he is a legendary brewmaster, although as one who does not bow to mundane pleasures, I know him not. There, after some days of grueling travel, I managed to spot a griffin mother standing tall on some rocks, so high above us that I had to use a spyglass. How beautiful can one animal truly be? The griffin is simply amazing. Their plumes are colourful and shiny, as if recently washed and brushed. Its lower body is that of a feline, and the upper half is that of a harpy eagle, a combination that is only possible by the raw power of magic. In the field of battle, Gryphons are formidable opponents. They can fly at high speeds and swoop down to attack their enemies with their sharp talons and powerful beak. Gryphons can also use their wings to create powerful gusts of wind to knock down or disorientate their foes. Due to their lion-like strength, they can also grapple with large enemies and hold them down. These creatures are revered as symbols of nobility and courage. They are intelligent creatures and are fiercely loyal to their riders. A griffin will often bond with a single rider for life, and they are known to mourn the loss of their rider deeply. The Emperor himself is said to ride a mighty imperial griffin to battle. Its name is Deathclaw, and it is said that a powerful bond exists between the creature and the Emperor. I have never seen the beast myself, but I can only wonder what a magnificent specimen it is. Anyway, there's a popular tale that describes Deathclaw as being so loyal to his master that the beast stood guard over the prone form of the wounded Emperor during the Battle of Blood Keep, all in order to buy time for the Reichsguard to arrive to his aid. I have been informed by many accounts that oftentimes Deathclaw can be seen flying freely over Altdorf and returning to his cage when the moon rises. I'll make a mental note to myself to try and look for it the next time I visit the busy city. It is also said that the elves of Ulthuan are known for riding the beasts as well, and the Ulthuani variety of griffin is said to be even more majestic. How can that be? I wouldn't know. I'd have to look at one myself to finally believe it. As I turned to check on Bugman, I found him near a nest containing some eggs. The dwarf clearly intended to capture the eggs of the marvelous creatures so that he could sell them for a pretty penny to imperial nobles and fund his range of ventures. I begged him not to do it. All I got back from the dwarf was a scornful look. It didn't last long, for the griffin swooped down to beak us to death. Had it not screeched loudly, I am afraid we would not have kept our heads, for its sharp talons got dangerously close to us. The other two rangers that were with us raised their crossbows, but as quickly as it came, the griffin took to the skies once again. To prevent any unfortunate situation, we were quickly on our way, going down once again and changing routes. 2 days later, as we are travelling to Altdorf, I think to myself, what a wonderful world! To learn about these majestic beasts is turning out to be the adventure of a lifetime. But every time I share my enthusiasm with others, they seem to disregard me. Well, I don't blame them. Many of these individuals have seen the worst of the world, and Sigmar knows how many terrors from beyond. I guess if I were a warrior that fights in the front lines myself, I wouldn't be so enthusiastic about the world we live in. I better keep my thoughts to myself. I will keep on my mission to learn about these great and varied beasts, and I'm actually excited for the next one. Saying goodbye to Bugman, I walk into the house of the noble that was recommended to me by the friend of a friend. His name is Grin, also known as Master Rider Grin. He will give me some insight on the next beast we will be exploring. As the name suggests, these creatures are almost literally half a griffin, having the entire body of a lion, the head of a bird of prey, and no wings. They stalk the deep forests of wild places, generally far away from humans. These creatures are really special, and as I take note, I ask Master Ryder Grin to tell me more about them.
Yes, these animals are undoubtedly special. But beyond their appearance, they aren't that dissimilar to any other species. Especially with the likes of many other predators, your bond with them is based upon mutual respect. In other simpler terms, you treat them well, and they won't claw your bowels out on a Wallentag afternoon.
Unlike other monstrous rides, which are generally taken when still young and are easily tameable, the Demigryph is captured already matured, used as mounts by various knightly orders of the Empire. The capture of a Demigryph is seen as a rite of passage for the potential rider, an extremely dangerous rite, I think, but then I learned that is precisely the point.
Pro creatures they are, and quick with it too. That's why we build their stables far away from the recruits' barracks, and keep a tight guard around them. You don't want any of those idioten around them before they cut their careers short. Besides, I've had one escaping already, by clawing at a loosened wooden board. He'll work on the old by night and cover with day by morning, that bastard.
In battle, they are used as a mount, and paired with their noble and capable riders, they are a deadly weapon. As soon as the war cry is raised, the Demigryph Knights will assemble into their own elite shock cavalry squadrons.
But despite it all, they're fiercely loyal. I've collected many stories of knights saved by their Demigryphs. But to try and build that kind of bond? You'd be luckier settling down grudges with a dwarfold. At least a noble out of free that comes waltzing around here gets the souvenir of a lifetime.
In contrast to the typical warhorse, a Demigryph will not necessarily try to kill its target by crushing it with a ferocious charge, but will instead rely on its superior size and power to overwhelm its foe. The Demigryph, when pushed to charge, would first jump on the enemy, then follow up with a series of quick swipes from under his muscular claws.
And that is why we don't allow anybody, not even amongst the hierarchy, to work with them without training. A Demigryph doesn't care for your status. If you want to ride along with them, you gotta enter their own world, and leave all your pretty ribbons and medals behind. And then maybe, they'll take you into consideration. If you still have the mastery to ride one, of course.
A Demigryph's tremendous endurance would allow it to fight fiercely for hours, during which it would savagely tear its prey to shreds with its claws and beak. On top of that, the rider will also fight with his own weapon so that the enemy is technically facing two living foes at once. Two individuals that have trained for combat for many years and have most likely gone through many adventures and fierce battles together.
We work closely with all the aspiring knights and make sure nobody gets hurt, on both parties. Especially considering how vindictive these animals can be. Wrong one, and you may have made an enemy for life. But this is also why all of those who have worked with them for a long time have developed a passion for the job. They ask a lot from their companion, it's true, and have little patience for our nonsense. Yet, if you can manage to get through to them, they'll give back tenfold, I promise. To this day, still nothing on this earth can get close to the joy I felt the first time riding a Demigryph.
After a Demigryph has earned its master's trust, the two will remain inseparable until the death of the prey or the death of the rider. There are tales abound of Demigryphs stalking the killer of their rider in order to avenge the death of their noble knight. After a long chat, darkness falls over the city of Altdorf, and the first drops of rain begin to pelt against the cobblestone streets and the roof above us. Master Ryder Grin points me to a wooden door, the room in which I'll be staying for the night. The next morning the sun shines and the streets of Altdorf are glistening and slick, the only evidence of the storm that has passed. As I say goodbye, I start walking towards the southern gate of the city to head for my next destination. And suddenly, there it is! I can see Deathclaw flying over the city, just as Bugman and the others had told me. But he's not alone. The Emperor himself seems to be riding him. What a sight! Just a couple of days later, I find myself arriving at the Grey Mountains near Bretonnia, where we will learn about a marvelous creature that inhabits that place. The savage Hippogryphs dwell on the highest peaks and deepest mountains. There I spot a wild one. I cannot really get too close, as these beasts are known to be really aggressive. Unlike the royal griffin, a hippogryph is known to go berserk at the slightest provocation, hunting man and beast alike, haunting sheep herders and cattle farmers, as well as orcs, goblins, and anything not smart or quick enough to hide. Hippogryphs have such an intense craving for warm flesh that anyone in their immediate vicinity are able to physically feel the intensity of their famished state. It has been reported that those who make it through an encounter with a hippogryph typically maintain a heightened awareness of their surroundings for many years afterward. These creatures have the upper body of a bird of prey, the forequarters of a mountain lion, and the rear end of a particularly strong horse, tail and all. Their savagery is sought after by courageous knights of Bretonnia, who sometimes prefer a machine of death for a mount rather than the glorious Pegasi that are also a popular mount amongst some of the noble knights of Bretonnia, because they are quicker, but they are also less aggressive. Capturing a hippogryph at a young age is essential for successful training, but the fierce territoriality of the adult specimens makes it a high-risk endeavour to hunt for eggs or young ones. Grail knights who manage to tame such an ill-tempered beast often receive the royal insignia, given by the Royaks themselves. These are then organized into elite flying shock cavalry, and are a very serious threat to any foe on the battlefield. After observing the wild creature, I thank Sigmar for allowing me to study these beasts without taking any harm until now. I will rest for some time before going to the sacred forest of Athelloren, where we will learn about a truly mighty creature of ancient origins. Dragons still live in the world. They are ancient creatures of myth and fear. Unfortunately, they are often characterized by the common folk as spiteful, fire-breathing monstrosities that would burn a whole town just for the sake of it.
I've seen a dragon!
Creatures that some believe are now thankfully extinct. This cannot be further from the truth. Dragons inhabit the deepest recesses of caves. They live in the middle of vast areas of greenwood, and they sleep in ancient tunnels and monumental halls. One of these locations is the place that the Wood Elves call their home, the glade and greenwood in Athelloren's enchanted forest. Nothing stays here for too long without changing, and forest dragons are no different. This is a race of giant flying creatures that have made a home in the forest and have lived in harmony for a very long time. They have adapted to life within the greenwood. The gigantic dragons have gradually evolved into an extension of the forest's inherent determination to survive and thrive. Although they are still ravenous predators, they also go out hunting when the forest needs them and spend the rest of the time dormant. Annabella Evanbreath is the elven guide I was assigned to. She will take me through safe passages and hidden pathways through the woods to get a glimpse of one of the mighty forest dragons. It is important to note that the forest dragons are truly revered in this place, and they are seen as great creatures full of wisdom and power. For they have existed for eons, and the race of elves grants them all the respect they deserve. As we contemplate the magnificence of one of these beings in its full splendor, Inabella tells me more about the nature of these dragons.
Forest dragons are interesting beings that are much more than just a big beast that can kill and destroy with ease. These individuals are extremely bright, and they take pleasure in expanding their knowledge. There are even tales of forest dragons that have spared their potential victims in exchange for a piece of information that enriched the dragon's knowledge. If the hostage's news is sufficiently valuable or intriguing, the old beast feels obligated to spare his life in exchange for the knowledge. Otherwise, the captive is inevitably devoured on the spot for unwittingly wasting the dragon's time. Such is their sacred and proud nature.
When the forest spirits are unable to stop an invasion of the sacred lands of Athaloran, at times when the forest senses a dire threat, it will awaken one or more forest dragons to deal with the invaders. And when fully ready for war, a dragon is truly a sight to behold. Even an immature dragon has a massive scaled body that is powerfully built and strong enough to shatter city gates. A dragon's wings are immense, able to bear it effortlessly through the sky and get quickly to the place where it's needed the most. They are a terrifying foe, for they are not mindless monsters, but cognizant, intelligent beings with an alien logic and a wealth of experience that only one of the eldest races in the world can have. The claws on their massive paws can rip through stone, and their jaws are armed with enormous fangs. The dragon's soporific breath can cause any man to collapse instantaneously, and there is no armor that can defend against it. So even if an enemy escapes the talon's grasp, they are not completely secure from the dragon. On occasion, the elves will petition the assistance of a dragon in order to serve as a steed for a glade lord. This is a request that the beast accedes to with reasonable grace when the purpose is justifiable, provided it was not disturbed from a particularly fascinating dream. Some individuals who have the good fortune or misfortune of actually seeing a glade lord riding a dragon may be under the impression that the dragon has been tamed in the same way that a horse would be. This is a common misconception. It is an inaccurate assumption that's been brought about by the ignorance that is only to be expected from races with such a lack of wisdom. In reality, the dragon itself grants permission for a wood elf rider to mount the creature into battle on its back. A connection between rider and dragon develops through time, leading to the two becoming friends and allies, rather than merely comrades in times of need. Because this connection is forged over generations, it is difficult for creatures with shorter lifespans, such as orcs or humans, to fully comprehend it. When the time to defend the sacred forest comes, the huge dragons are one of the most potent manifestations of the forest's fury, and they strike without mercy when the situation calls for it. The forest dragons have turned the tide of many key battles throughout the history of Athaloran. Ferocious monstrosities that are not easily matched, few are able to hold their ground against their rage, unless they have mastered the basic terror that is evoked solely by its aspect. As I learn about this creature, I realize that I really like this place. It has a unique sense of wonder that I cannot explain, and to add, I feel secure here, knowing that the elves, forest spirits, and the mighty dragons take care of this forest. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to stay here for long. and Inabella is already showing me the way out. As I leave the sacred forest of Athalorin, I can't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the ancient trees and magical creatures that call this place home. The air around me is thick with the scent of exotic flowers and the hum of unseen magic. I turn back to look at Athalorin one last time. I can still hear the whispers of the trees and the magical creatures, and I feel an uplifting sense of gratitude for the time I just spent. Now it's time to sail to Ulthuan, to learn about the mighty dragons that live in that place. I have a good friend in Calador that will show me around, and will even let me stay for some days there. After days of navigation on a trip that was mainly without trouble, I catch my first glimpse of Ulthuan in the distance. The island rises up from the sea like a majestic jewel, its shores lapped by the gentle waves of the ocean. I can see towering cliffs and sandy beaches, and I can feel the excitement and anticipation building up inside of me. Suddenly I find myself navigating through a river with crystalline waters, and making our way to the meeting point. I can already feel the peace that is commonly felt in this place, as the legends say. Although in the distance, I can hear the rumbling of the vortex that continuously spins with magic energy to keep the forces of the war at bay. Not long after, Sithebron, a dragon lord of Calador, receives me and warmly welcomes me into Ulthuan. Together we make our way into the realm of Calador, where my friend tells me about the mighty dragons that still live there. As we walk through the realm, I am struck by the beauty and grandeur of the land. The rolling hills and lush forests are unlike anything I have ever seen before.
Our brethren from the oldest times, the purest and truest expression of the power of life that this world has to offer. Once the skies were filled with their graceful forms, and they danced about the thermals that flow over the mountains in intricate mating rituals that were a joy to behold. They sat at the feet of Vorl and set their fiery breath to heating his forges. When we went to war against the forces of chaos, they carried the greatest of our heroes upon their backs, and they were ever the first to engage the enemy, and the last to withdraw from the field. Now they dwindle, as do we all, and their song is fading to memory. When they perish entirely, so I think shall we, and perhaps that is only proper.
As I see the mighty dragons flying in the air, I catch myself observing the creature with awe and reverence, but also a touch of sadness, as I learn that in days long gone by, there used to be a much greater number of these wonderful beasts flying in the skies. Now the times have changed. The dragons currently spend their time dreaming away the years in the immense tunnels that can be found buried deep within the Dragonspine Mountains. There are 3 main types of High Elf dragons, and they are differentiated from one another based on their advancing age and, consequently, their growing levels of knowledge and power. On Ulthuan, currently, there are not many new dragons being raised, but the elves know these young ones as sun dragons, due to their fiery tempers and the vibrant, warm coloration of their scales. It is known that the sun dragons can be awoken from their great slumbers faster than their older kin. And mind you, this is not a matter of pressing a wooden stick against the sleeping beast, no. There are certain rituals and preparations that must be done. The dragon waking songs and rituals have been kept secret for ages. Caledonian mages have set binding spells on anyone who would uncover the secrets of reawakening a dragon, and it is widely known that anyone who would ever seek to divulge their knowledge will perish. The dragons continue to mature throughout their lifetimes, and dragons of any colour are capable of attaining enormous sizes if they live for a sufficiently long period of time. Those who grow older over the centuries are known as moon dragons, and are, of course, bigger and wiser than the younger sun dragons. They are so ancient that they were around long before the time of Narration the Defender, and participated in the battles against the demons that came from the first invasion of Chaos. The most ancient and potent of Ulthuan's dragons are referred to as star dragons, because they are essentially as old as the very same stars that make up the cosmos. These dragons are known for their great age and power, and are even capable of fighting against the most powerful of beings in existence, such as greater demons. These dragons are known to have routed entire armies on their own on many occasions throughout history, and have changed the course of entire wars and events. The days go by at peace in Ulthuan, and every day I learn something new about the dragons and the elves that live in this continent. The elves are tall and graceful, with sharp features and piercing eyes that show how smart and wise they are, in a weird but interesting resemblance to the dragons they so much revere. They are great at the art of magic and the strategies of war, and their cities are architectural and artistic marvels. My time here has been nothing but wonderful, but it is time to leave and travel to faraway lands. The next type of dragon to study is a very peculiar one, but an unexpected event occurred before I could depart. As I was making preparations to travel to Nagaroth to learn more about the black dragons that reside there, my elven friend revealed to me some disturbing information. There have been reports that an invading army of dark elves were making their way to Ulthuan. Were they planning a siege? Were they trying to steal dragon eggs? I wouldn't know, but I am warned of this, and I'm conscious of the fact that it is impossible for me to leave Ulthuan at this time, and that I will be required to remain here until the invasion has been successfully repelled. As the news spreads through the realm, a palpable sense of urgency can be felt. The elves are working hard to get ready for the invasion, and all over Ulthuan, defensive plans and procedures are being put into action. They move swiftly and in great synchronization, as if they had practiced the procedures thousands of times already. With the uncommonly long lifespans of the elves, I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. The day of the invasion draws near, and I have done my part to help in the preparations, and all I have to do now is wait. I see the steely determination of the defenders, ready to fight for their home and their people. The dark elves are getting closer by the day. As the Druki fleet approaches, I was informed that some of the forces that will be attacking have already been spied on. The High Elves use some of the most talented spies and agents of the entire world, but it happens that these are not limited to the elves themselves, no. Creatures from the seas and birds that fly high above everything are able to report in advance on enemy movements and intruders in the island of Ulthuan. Through one of these reports, it was learned that a black dragon is traveling with the Dark Elves, Blessed Sigmar, I think with a hint of excitement, the beast is coming to me. But just as quickly as the excitement invaded me, it was replaced by concern. Should I be worried about me? Well, I'm not a warrior. There's no chance they'll put me on the front lines to repel this invasion, I think. I realized then that I'm more worried about the High Elves' lives that would be in danger. But such is the nature of the world we live in. My job here is to only document what I see and study the many beasts that inhabit this crazy world. And now it's time to do what we can with the Black Dragon. If the creature is flying above the fleet, or if it's trapped, jailed in the interiors of the ships, I was not told. But if I had to guess, I'd bet many of my hard-earned coins that the fearsome beast is between bars of steel and under the protection of the cruel Druki Beastmasters. What matters is that Sithebron, Dragon Lord of Calador, my friend of many years who has seen after me through my stay here in Ulthuan, has given me the chance to watch the battle unfold, to be able to see the Black Dragon with my own eyes. It is, of course, under my own risk and only under the condition that I watch the battle from the safe spot he has shown me, considered to be under a safe distance from the real danger. As the invading Dark Elves appear, the host of Ulthuan receives them with sword and steel. Not long after, the Black Dragon they have brought appears to be attacking the settlement that the High Elves have garrisoned. I can see the Dark Elves pouring in, and soon a fierce battle is taking place. Black Dragons are notoriously more powerful than their pure-blooded counterparts due to the overabundance of dark magic flowing inside their bodies. Yet, unlike most other tainted species, Black Dragons do not suffer from the horrifying side effects of mutations that are typical of such creatures. Suddenly, the High Elf Lord appears riding a dragon himself, and without hesitation, he lunges forward to confront the black-winged creature that is already tearing through the settlement. The two dragons clashed, their bodies twisting and writhing in a deadly dance of claws, fangs, fire, and acid. The air was filled with the deafening roar of their battle. On the ground, the elves kept fighting their own bloody battle. The fight between the High Elves and the Dark Elves was a bloody melee, with the sound of clashing swords and the cries of those who were about to perish resonating through the air. The High Elves battled with poise and dexterity, each of their own motions being calculated and lethal. They wore gleaming armor that shone in the sunlight, and carried weapons of the finest craftsmanship. On the other hand, the Dark Elves were engaged in battle with a fervor that was both harsh and vicious. They wore dark armor that gave the appearance of absorbing light, and the blades of their weapons were wickedly bent so that they inflicted deep cuts that bled profusely. They fought with a murderous prowess that bordered on madness, hacking and slashing with their deadly blades. I must admit that the ability of the elves to fight, regardless of their motivations, is something simply admirable to watch. The elves move fast, so fast that my eyes find it hard to follow their every move. At last, what seemed like an eternity to me, the dragon from our side gained the upper hand. With a quick attack, it struck the Black Dragon a fatal blow, sending it crashing to the ground in a lifeless heap, and the course of the battle changed from there. Black dragons are relatively similar to their more pure-blooded cousins in appearance, but they have lost the ability to belch flaming breath, and instead gained the ability to breathe an extremely poisonous gas that can wither the lungs of its victims and rot their flesh. In Nagaroth, in the chilling land of the Dark Elves, we can find these black dragons. These are flying monstrosities that have come out of stolen eggs and have been enchanted with dark magic that would both corrupt and enhance the unborn creatures within. A cruel fate indeed, for such an ancient and majestic creature, but such is the way of the Dark Elves. Both the Dark Elves' naval forces and their land armies have traditionally made extensive use of enslaved monsters throughout their history, and the dragons are no exception. It is believed that the dungeons of Karend Ka are packed with monsters that the cruel beastmasters have subdued, and that among them, one or more specimens of each and every known species in the world can be found. The most notorious beastmaster among the Druki is Rakath, who has an ability to tame wild creatures that is almost supernatural in its scope. He rides atop a ferocious black dragon known as Brachus. At the head of hordes of war hydras and black dragons, the beast lord Rakath has laid waste to the coastlines and inland regions of the old world, razing cities and ports in process, and capturing the survivors to serve as slaves for Nagaroth. It is also known that Malekith himself rides one of these black dragons. The name of the creature he rides is Seraphon. The Witch King took him as a mount when he was impressed with the beast's ruthless instincts and dark nature. It is said that in the depths of the Spiteful Peaks mountain range, a group of shades came across an unattended, perhaps undiscovered nest of eggs. Malekith gave the order for the eggs to be taken back to Nagarond once they found them. There, for close to a century, until the eggs finally hatched, they were looked to in a ritual capacity by the priestesses of Cain. The first to hatch was Seraphon, and before the witch elves had a chance to stop him, he had already emerged and destroyed a good number of the other eggs. Such was his violent nature from birth, and perhaps that's why the Witch King was impressed by the creature. After that, some of Malekith's most trusted generals received one of the few dragon hatchlings that were still alive after Seraphn's rampage. The more I learn about the black dragons and their dark nature, the more I lament their fate. My stay here in Ulthuan has been a mix of everything. I have seen quiet times, and have seen a bloody battle firsthand. Perhaps I will rest for a few days before I continue my journey. Seeking to quench my thirst for knowledge, I left the pristine shores of Ulthuan behind. I set off on a perilous journey with nothing more than an aged map and a determination that would not waver. The journey took me through perilous storms and times of peaceful waters, but it ultimately led me to the land of the dead. There I disembarked and started advancing into Nehekhara. My worn face was being struck by the burning rays of the sun, and the dry air was scratching my already dry throat. Yet there was an eerie calmness about this desolate wasteland, as if the dunes themselves contained secrets that only a fool or a lunatic would dare to unearth. After hearing tales of the beasts and abominations that were said to inhabit this terrifying region, I knew that the path I was about to embark upon would not be an easy one. Yet there was no going back. I continued to go forward, the undersides of my boots sinking deeper and deeper into the golden sand, leaving behind a trail of footprints that appeared to be predestined to be erased by the unrelenting wind that never ceased. I had learned through many books and tales that entire cities are suddenly uncovered when the winds and the sands move accordingly to reveal vast metropolises that were constructed many centuries ago. And as fast as these cities are uncovered, they are suddenly swallowed once again by the vast desert, never to be seen again, covered in tremendously vast mountains of sand in a matter of just a couple of days. There are other landmarks, temples and ancient tombs, which seem to be always above the surface, showing their majestic splendor to the ghosts that roam these empty lands. As I walk further into the center of this region, I started to come across remnants of the long-vanished civilization of Nehekhara. The path I walked along was lined with crumbling stone statues that bore the faces of gods that had been forgotten for a long time. The smothering grip of the desert appeared to suffocate the very life out of everything it touched, leaving behind just degradation and the ever-present stillness as its legacy. Suddenly, a vast and ancient necropolis loomed before me, an eerie monument to a civilization long buried beneath the sands. As I walked through the desolate streets, the once great buildings now reduced to crumbling ruins, I felt as though I were a trespasser in a realm that was never meant for the living. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sounds I made, some of them echoing off the time-worn stones and walls. As I went with my research of the city, I came across a magnificent library. The enormous doors were open in such a way that they seemed to be calling me inside. The smell of rust and the faintest trace of old paper permeated the air inside, and it was heavy with both of those scents. I made my way in. With trembling hands, I reached out and carefully selected a scroll from one of the shelves. As I unfurled the brittle parchment, my heart raced with anticipation. The ancient text before me was written in a long-lost script, but I had spent years studying the languages and histories of this world's many realms, and I was well equipped to decipher its secrets. As I did so, I couldn't help but feel as though I was being watched, and I'm sure that, in a way, I was indeed being watched. But this is what I do, and I know the dangers I would face, even before coming here. This is the land of the dead, but I am Steffan Hoffman, Doctor of Biology and Zoology of the University of Nuln, and I will uncover the secrets that this place hides. I spent the hours going over the scrolls and slowly piecing together the story of Nehekhara as I did so. It is a story of people with an insatiable desire for power. In bygone epochs, the kingdom of Nehekhara was a formidable civilization that was controlled by extraordinary kings. Their cities were magnificent, and their armies were formidable, but their desire to live forever would prove to be their doom in the end. It is said that the gods of old transformed the lands into a prosperous realm, and ruled there for thousands of years until the birth of the race of man. In exchange for their worship, the deities offered to protect and watch over those who lived in the great land. The gods taught them how to read, how to grow food, and how to make a better life for themselves. Thus was this great civilization born, and through centuries of work and culture, it grew powerful. The ancient kingdom of Nehekhara was at its peak, when other men were still primitive and savage. There was a time when Nehekhara was considered to be the pinnacle of human civilization. It was during this golden age that its cities shined with breathtaking magnificence Its armies conquered entire nations, and kings ruled as gods amongst humans. With the passing of time and many centuries of prosperity, the kings of those incredibly prosperous lands refused to let something as mere as death deny them of their lifetime's accomplishments or rob them of their rich possessions. It is believed that upon death, each king would be mummified in an elaborate ritual to preserve them until the day of awakening, when they would arise into a golden paradise filled with all their subjects and any belongings that were entombed with them, and in this place they would rule for all eternity. In this way, huge tombs were built for the kings, their servants and their possessions. Even entire armies were buried alive, with all their weaponry and equipment needed to protect their kings in the next life.
Hail to the mighty tomb guard who stand before me. You who stand before me, you who will stand watch over me for all eternity. For I, Cetra, Lord and First Priest King of Khemri, will awaken to command you in the paradise that awaits us. Hail to the Ushabti and Sphinx who stand sentinel beside the monuments of the king. Hail to the commanders of my army, leading forth your regiments to join me in eternity. Hail to the warriors of my legions. Make ready your weapons to fill the air with the sound of your worship. Your standards are pleasing to my sight and that of the gods. See how the light of Fetra shines upon them. Remember them gleaming this day as you enter the darkness of the tomb. Fear not what we must do, for we are the glory of Khemri, and we shall rise again to fulfill our manifest destiny of ruling this world. There are great deeds that remain undone, enemies yet to conquer and raptures yet to rejoice in. So, as it is written, so shall it be done. I, Cetra, have proclaimed it. Let none dare oppose my will.
With centuries, Nehekhara became a society obsessed with death and immortality. Skulls and skeletons became common symbols of everlasting life, and they were carved on the shields, banners, and chariots of the priest king's armies. As the Nehekharan obsession with death flourished, the architecture and landscape of the great land irrevocably changed as well. No expense was spared in paving the path for immortality, and the splendor, wealth, and power of Nehekhara was breathtaking to behold. Over time, their necropolises became bigger and shadowed over the towns of the living. Through dark sorcery and forbidden rituals, the kings and their priests sought to defy death itself. But their efforts to bind their souls to this world only served to awaken an ancient and malevolent force. The great necromancer, Nagash, swept through Nehekhara like a scourge, his dark magic corrupting the land forever. The once mighty civilization was reduced to a desolate wasteland, and its citizens were cursed to spend eternity wandering as restless ghosts. The kings who had sought immortality became undead beings known as Tomb Kings, and they were destined to rule eternally over a kingdom that was full of dust and decay. Condemned to a life that was only a fraction of their former existence, the Tomb Kings now fight to restore their vast kingdom to its former glory, striking forth to reclaim the lands from the living. As I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of a civilization consumed by its own hubris, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. The story of Nehekhara is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the perils of ambition and of the dark forces that lurk in the shadows of our world. The long hours spent over the ancient scrolls had left me both physically and mentally exhausted. I could feel the weight of my eyelids growing heavier by the moment as the night fell over the lands. It was time to rest. I was able to locate a secluded spot in the wide length of the library, and the shadows provided by the towering walls and high rooftops gave me a strange sense of privacy and safety. I must say that only a fool would feel truly safe in Nehekhara, but at least I knew I could spend the night here, partially hidden from any roaming mercenary warbands or wild creatures. The air was still thick with the scent of decaying parchment, but I had grown accustomed to it. From my pack, I retrieved a small bundle of provisions, a simple meal of dried meats, crusty bread, and a few pieces of fruit. It wasn't much, but it was enough to sustain me for another day in this unforgiving land. As I ate and tasted the food, I couldn't help but think of the countless souls who had once feasted on the bounties of Nehekhara. Their laughter and merriment echoing through the halls of these now ruined palaces. My thoughts turned to the stories I had uncovered in the ancient scrolls, the tales of ambition and the terrible price paid for the pursuit of immortality. For a mortal man to pretend to be like gods, to reach for immortality? The audacity! I quickly found myself wondering if there was still hope for Nehekhara, if the land of the dead could ever truly find peace. Battles in the land of the dead tend to be fought along the caravan routes and in the vicinity of ancient necropolises, not only because these attract adventurers and tomb robbers, but also because of the tomb kings who awaken from time to time to fight among themselves. Massive battles involving thousands upon thousands of reanimated skeletons and massive constructs are fought silently in the desert sands. There are no battle cries or barked orders. The innumerable skeletons and constructs move by the power of will and magic alone, obeying their masters as they did in life. Only the deafening sounds of broken bones, metal, and cracking stones are heard when these titanic battles are fought. After these battles are finished, miles upon miles of shattered bones and other remnants are then swallowed once again by the unforgiving sands of Nehekhara. Dark Elf expeditions have occasionally managed to advance deep into the land of the dead. When that happens, increasingly bigger armies are raised from the infinite pool of bones that is the desert, and the intruders are dealt with swift vengeance. In reality, to try to steal the treasures and relics of the Tomb Kings is to ask for damnation. The Ushapti are massive guardian sculptures that are carved out of stone and have their heads of terrifying animals, such as lions, crocodiles, or jackals. These statues are meant to reflect the various facets of the gods of ancient Nehekhara that they are said to represent. On the battlefield, the Ushapti are lethal opponents, Their stone limbs are far stronger than mortal soldiers, allowing them to easily slice through the ranks of the enemy. In addition to giving them an unnatural resilience, the magical energy that holds them together also renders them practically resistant to all but the most destructive of strikes. Against formidable enemies such as the elves, bigger constructs can be awakened too. One of these massive beings is the dreaded Arrow Titan. This is a gigantic construct of the Tomb Kings, and serves as evidence to the impressive might and splendor of Nehekhara's distant past. The terrifying presence of the Arrow Titan, which looms over the battleground like a furious god, strikes terror into the hearts of its adversaries. It is a colossal statue that embodies the essence of Nehekharan god kings. It bears the regal countenance of a pharaoh, its noble visage adorned with intricate carvings and inscriptions that tell the story of its eternal rule. The Arrow Titan wields immense magical power, drawing upon the very energies of the land of the dead itself. Its eyes burn with an otherworldly light, capable of searing the souls of its enemies and reducing their flesh to ash in an instant. The Arrow Titan wields in one hand an ornate staff called the Icon of Petra. The staff is emblazoned with a hieroglyph of the sun deity and serves to illuminate the Arrow Titan's way as it travels through the abyss that lies between the mortal world and the realm of souls. This light wards away the evil spirits that reside in the darkness, demons that would otherwise feed on the souls of individuals who are wandering the void if they were not prevented from doing so by this light. The other hand of the Arrow Titan is used to hold a massive pair of scales that are known as the Scales of Usurian. Encounters with orcs, goblins, and barbaric tribes are common, and they are dealt with the full uncontained fury of the undead host. The sacking of their treasures is an offense that can't be forgiven, and the Tomb Kings ensure every last trinket stolen is returned to their domain. To achieve this, the undead use a variety of constructs to support their main troops. Another of these famous constructs is the Tomb Scorpion, terrifying creations of the mortuary cult, blending the ruthless temperament of a carnivorous beast and the emotionless resolve of the undead. Constructed using a variety of materials, including stone, metal, lacquered wood, and fused bone, the Tomb Scorpions are brought to life through powerful necromantic magic. Their design mimics the natural form of a scorpion, but turned to a massive scale, with a segmented body, multiple legs, and a venomous stinger that drips with a deadly concoction capable of paralyzing or even killing those who are unfortunate enough to be struck by it. They ambush their opponents abruptly and without prior warning by burrowing beneath the surface of the desert and erupting into the fray in a spray of sand. The Tomb Scorpions are known for their incredible speed and agility, allowing them to move swiftly across the battlefield and strike with deadly precision. To protect their borders, the Tomb Kings deploy the deadly Sepulchre Stalkers. These are statues that have the body of a snake and the upper torso of a man. They are reanimated sentinels, created by the ancient Nehekharans to delineate the borders of a king's realm. They wait for the invaders to pass by, while they lie in wait beneath the surface of the desert. Once they do, they launch a devastating ambush. When the trap is sprung, several horrifying snake-like forms burst from the ground to surround their prey. Exemplifying the stealth and ability of Nehekhara's long-gone hunters, these unsettling beings are intended to perform the dual role of assassin and scout, striking from the sands to eliminate vital targets before vanishing again beneath the desert or melting into the shadows. Generally, these constructs are more than enough to deal with any intruders that venture too deep into the lands of the dead. It is only when entire armies or mighty enemies stand their ground against them that the Tomb Kings rise more forces and constructs to deal with the intruders. Nehekhara has also been invaded more than once by lizard men from the Southlands, who are constantly searching for lost plaques looted from their temple cities in the past. Both races value their treasures highly, and they protect them at all costs. To achieve an effective protection of their realm, the undead priests of Nehekhara awaken the mighty Kemrian war sphinxes to deal with the most powerful enemies. Their outer layers are so tough that they are almost immune to injury, and their armor can withstand all but the most direct blows. In combat, the Kemrian war sphinxes act as unstoppable juggernauts, trampling opposing ranks with ease and smashing through fortifications with no difficulty. Their formidable claws can easily rip through armor, and their gigantic tails may dispatch whole enemy squads with a single strike of lethal strength. They provide a high platform from which the Tomb Kings might command their armies of the undead, and are frequently ridden into battle by elite Tomb Guard, or even by the Tomb Kings themselves. These mighty constructs stand as eternal guardians of the Tomb King's domain, symbols of their unyielding determination to reclaim their lost glory and undisputed rule over the land of the dead. The more I learn, the more I realize that thousands of battles have been fought in the barren sea of sand that is Nehekhara, and it shall be so until the end of times. As I prepared for my departure, gathering my belongings and saying my silent farewells to the land of the dead, the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting its golden light upon the ruins and tombs that had become my shelter for what had felt like an eternity. As I moved through the desert, the wind whispered its secrets. Some seemed like temptations, some others sounded almost like silent cries of pain. The sands shifting beneath me, the colossal statues of the Kemrian war sphinxes, the eerie sepulchral stalkers, and the monstrous tomb scorpions seemed to be but distant memories now, their silent vigil continuing as I moved further away from their domain. Time and space seemed to twist in weird ways in these lands, but I kept walking. After this trip, I felt a rekindled flame inside of me. A flame that would guide me through the trials and tribulations that still wait for me beyond the sands of Nehekhara. What fortune awaits me beyond the borders of Nehekhara? What horrors? Coming from Nehekhara all the way to the south, I have travelled for days and days until reaching the Badlands. At first sight, this place seems like naught but a barren strip of rocks and canyons, but that is very far from the truth. Dwarven ruins, old human settlements, nomadic tribes, ancient undead monsters and greenskins are all present in these lands. embarking on a journey through this region means willingly risking my own life, as even with the protection of a sizable, well-armored military force, safe passage cannot be guaranteed. So I have been told, and I am at peace with that. I was born to traverse the world and write about my findings so that the new generations can learn about the intricacies of this fascinating world we live in. Praise be the sun, the wind, and the two moons, for right now they are my only companions as I travel through this dangerous region. These are vast, arid plains that stretch between the towering World's Edge Mountains in the east, the volcanic Dragonback Mountains in the west, the petty kingdoms of the Border Princes in the north, and the shores of the Black Gulf in the south. And what a beauty when the orange morning sun hits the rocks just right. It is as if they are all made of gold. Or maybe it is just a mirage. Only Sigmar knows. What I do know is that these territories are not only vast, but make for fertile soil for my research. As I walk deeper and deeper into the Badlands, the more I realize that this place is a truly harsh and unforgiving region. The terrain is treacherous and inhospitable, marked by its desolate landscapes, towering mesas, jagged cliffs, and deep chasms. This arid region is punctuated by numerous eerie rock formations and labyrinthine canyons, rendering navigation a considerable challenge for me. The climate is another crucial aspect of the Badlands, often characterized by extreme temperatures. During the daytime, the sun bakes the rocky landscape, resulting in scorching hot conditions. At night, however, I have discovered that the temperature plummets dramatically, creating a bitterly cold environment. The skies are nearly always overcast, casting an oppressive gloom over the desolate expanse. Rain is an uncommon occurrence, leading to the overall dryness of the region. But now let's move on to discuss the inhabitants and the different creatures that call this harsh environment home. Each of them have adapted to survive in the challenging conditions of the Badlands, demonstrating remarkable resilience and resourcefulness. These days across the Badlands have been characterized by a series of carefully planned and discreetly established camps. These makeshift settlements serve as my refuge in the wild and are strategically set up near sources of water or high vantage points that allow for early detection of threats. I've been doing my best to be cautious not to draw attention to myself, especially considering the predatory inhabitants of this unforgiving land. But oftentimes, things don't go as planned. The first creature that I was able to study was the humble giant wolf of the plains, but not in the way I would have preferred. It happened that goblin wolf riders attacked my camp, no doubt having followed my trail.
Gonna kill him!
These goblin wolf riders, a common menace in these parts, are known for their agility, ferocity, and cunning. Mounted on wolves, they swiftly descended upon my camp with terrifying speed. My experiences as a zoologist have taught me that understanding your adversary often means the difference between life and death. I did not attempt to fight, for I knew my throat would become the wolf's supper, so I surrendered. They took me prisoner and stripped me of my valuables. You are only reading this because I was able to hide some of my things in ways that I am not proud of. Keep in mind that I'm speaking of the giant wolf, not the dire wolf, which, although similar, is a completely different species of canine often found in Sylvania. The giant wolf is an ancient predator of the race of men, made all the deadlier by the bond that the packs have with the goblin tribes. Over hundreds of years, both groups have evolved together, Not unlike the horse lords of Bretonnia, the goblin tribes, especially the ones from the Badlands and the eastern steppes, breed these wolves to be bigger and meaner, but more docile with the goblins themselves. The wolf and its rider have an unshakable bond forged in the perils of nomadic life. As to their physiology, it seems that they are no different from a regular wolf, only bigger and with thicker fur. The goblin chief seemed to be interested in me and carried me himself on the back of a gigantic wolf named Big Tiff. We rode for a day and a night until we reached the tribe's camp. The chief, named Gulgor Wolf Tamer, had taken over the settlement for his tribe, the Fangsnar tribe, from a small party of orcs. He had taken great interest in me, and I could not understand why, until he showed me that the village was built on top of the entrance to ancient dwarf ruins. Gulgor wanted me to open the door, which was protected by complex mechanisms, in exchange for my life. At least that's what I understood. I'm not sure why the goblin chief thought I was the one capable of opening that door, but seeing no other choice, I went with it. I promptly took the deal, taking it as an opportunity to further my studies and, of course, save my life. Through rude gestures and grunts, the goblins warned me that I had only limited time to come up with a solution to open the big sealed door. I complied and started studying the ancient mechanism that kept the giant gate closed. I stayed with the tribe for about a week, or a bit less, I think. Time seems to flow differently when you have no way of keeping up with the dates, but it mattered not. I was able to observe the goblins very closely, which was part of the reason why I came here. I theorized that these are not often rumored hill goblins that are native to the hilly grasslands of the Badlands. I always thought that they were mere myths, made up by caravaneers to make it seem that they are braver than they are. They seem meaner and angrier than regular goblins. They seem to be bigger and more muscular, as well as having a darker shade of green skin. Albeit, they are smarter too, since regular goblins would have killed me on sight. Aside from hill goblins, I know of hobgoblins, fire goblins, night goblins, forest goblins, frost goblins, and plain goblins, albeit there are several more that I am quite sure are just legends, like the lesser goblins and red goblins. Time was seemingly running out for me, as the goblins seemed to be growing more agitated and desperate. I saw two of them fighting each other to the death. But then, it clicked. I figured out a way to open the door mechanism, or so I thought. So, I headed towards the sealed gate. But this was not meant to be. While fiddling with the dwarfish mechanism, I spotted a suspicious stack of dust moving rapidly in our direction. Quickly, I hid as best as I could. The party of orcs this settlement used to belong to had decided to come back, and they were very angry. The attack hit us like a green, angry avalanche. Death surrounded me on all sides as the fierce goblins and their wolves put up a mighty fight against the avenging, savage orcs. But it was all for naught. By sheer luck, I made my way sneaking into the throne room of Gulgor Wolf Tamer. There the goblin fought a perilous duel against the orc warlord who had come for his head. Although the goblin's resistance was mighty, his head was off of his body in a short time. What lay in front of me were no mere foes, but gigantic beasts made only for one thing: war. An orc is a machine made solely to grow bigger, eat and kill. Not necessarily in that order, though. A common orc is often referred to as mountain orc, because that is where they are most often seen. Aside from that, the most distinct subcultures are the savage orcs, which abandon such frivolous things as armor or metal weapons, in favor of protection by their gods, Gork and or Mork, and Darkland Orcs, which are notably more organized and disciplined, having perhaps learned a thing or two from their Chaos Dwarf overlords. That said, tis speculated that hundreds, maybe thousands of Orc subcultures exist, since they are almost literally everywhere and adapt quickly to their environment. Orcs further divide themselves into roughly 3 main subspecies: Common Orcs, Orc Biggins, and Black Orcs. An Orc Biggin is simply a common orc who is sufficiently old and experienced enough to lead other smaller, weaker orcs. They are in equal parts more intelligent and more cunning. Savage orcs are known for their rudimentary yet lethal weaponry, often favouring massive clubs, stone axes, or simple bone-tipped spears. Notably, they wear little to no armour, relying instead on crude war paint and tattoos that they believe provide protection from their enemies. These massive green-skinned brutes are the epitome of raw, unfettered brutality and primal aggression, living for nothing more than the thrill of battle. Unlike their more civilized counterparts found elsewhere, the savage orcs of the Badlands possess a wilder, more primal edge to their temperament, likely a consequence of the harsh environment they inhabit. Black orcs, however, are where things get strange. Some scholars believe that it is simply the final evolutionary step in an orc's life. If they get bigger and meaner enough, their hides thicken and grow significantly darker, but that is about it. I, however, subscribe to a more interesting hypothesis: the Chaos Dwarfs, known for their cruelty and contempt towards their lessers, have created a being that would be the perfect slave. Stubborn, resistant, and fast-producing like an orc, but stronger and smarter and, in theory, more obedient. That backfired in a legendary way, almost destroying the Chaos Dwarfs in a gigantic revolt led by the angriest and most renowned orc there is, Grimgor Ironhide. The savage orcs that attacked us were starting to get comfortable. I needed to get out of there, so as the sun fell over the horizon and under the cover of darkness, with the moon as my only witness, I crawled my way out of that place and got away before any of those greenskins would notice me. I would live for another day. After a narrow escape from imprisonment, I found myself alone once again in the barren expanse of the Badlands. With my supplies nearly depleted, I faced the grim reality of survival in this desolate place. Food and water were scarce, my rations were nearly gone, and this place offered little in the way of sustenance. Yet, despite the adversity, I was determined to press on. The will to survive, to continue my research, pushed me onward. As a biologist, I understand that life is a process of adaptation and resilience. In the heart of the Badlands, I was living this truth firsthand. As night descended, the temperature plummeted dramatically. I was fortunate to find a small crevice in the side of a towering mesa. It was barely more than a crack in the rock, but to me, it was a refuge. I crawled in, my body shivering from cold, but grateful for the shelter. As dawn broke, I decided to venture towards a patch of woods I had spotted in the distance. Venturing there promised the possibility of food and water, and with my supplies critically low, this was a risk I had to take. I was able to forage for some edible berries and even discovered a small stream. The water, though slightly brackish, was potable, and the berries, while bitter, were nourishing. As I ventured deeper, I was suddenly brought to a halt by a low, guttural growl, echoing among the trees. Out of the foliage, an enormous troll appeared not too far from me. Luckily, it was wandering too distracted to recognize my presence, so I hid behind some bushes and observed. Trolls are notorious in the Badlands. These massive creatures are known for their brute strength, formidable resilience. This one was wounded. Its belly was torn open, but it was regenerating rapidly. I wondered what sort of creature would have caused this wound. Trolls have the amazing ability to regenerate almost any wound, save for those made from fire. As any weary traveller, I am familiar with these creatures. The word itself comes from the dwarf tongue Khazalid, passed down to us through cultural osmosis. Trolls in general are giant, brutish humanoids. They are dull-witted, with the sole exception of river hags, and are thus used as shock troops by various armies around the world, notably the Greenskins, who promise them unending meals in exchange for service. Being cowards by nature, they do fit their greenskin companions to a T. The common troll is seen almost literally everywhere in the old world, especially in Troll Country up in northern lands of Kislev, and are known for their especially strong stomach acid, being able to digest almost literally anything, and are known to spew their stomach contents onto enemies. Their skin also looks like rocks in a bid to blend into the environment. All this talk of natural camouflage, it almost seems like they have a thriving community of natural predators. And they sort of do. Trolls are cannibalistic and will eat their own fellows if they are smaller and weaker than them. Luckily for me, the wounded troll left without noticing me. So I continued my journey north of the Badlands. Towering mountains, their peaks obscured by ghostly mists, rose ominously in the distance. Despite the inherent danger and unpredictability, there is a haunting beauty to the Badlands that is as compelling as it is terrifying. As I walked in this unpredictable landscape, I encountered some seemingly carefully placed rocks, wood, and totems, and other strange artifacts. They were scattered all over the place, but I could tell they were placed there with a certain degree of intention. Then it clicked for me. I realized that I had stumbled upon one of the most enigmatic entities of the greenskin culture. The rogue idols. These are massive constructs made from rock, wood, and other materials, imbued with raw, primal energy by the potent magic of the greenskin shamans. They are worshipped as well as feared weapons of war, functioning as living representations of the greenskins' destructive nature and unquenchable need to fight. They are seen as the avatars of the greenskin gods, Gork and Mork. The rogue idols are deadly in battle, and are a menacing presence in any confrontation given their tremendous power and almost insurmountable resistance to damage. They march relentlessly forward with limbs the size of stumps and a sneering grimace on their leering faces. The unpredictable behavior of these monstrosities and the capricious energy that gives them life render the control exerted by orc shamans highly unstable. Despite being the creators, the shamans often struggle to command these beasts, which tend to rampage at their own will. When the magic fueling them dwindles, they fall apart, only to reassemble themselves when the winds of magic surge to a tempestuous intensity, which may occur mere hours, years, or even centuries later. During such times, subduing an idol often requires the intervention of a potent sorcerer. However, without a battle to vent its rage, the sorcerer's control over the creature remains highly volatile and uncertain at best. But as I was leaving this rocky place, I stumbled upon a rare artifact amongst all of the strange objects made of stone and wood. My curious eye caught a glint of shifting color hidden within a crevice. Drawn to the flicker, what I discovered was a sight that made my heart leap with curiosity and wonder. It was a dagger, but unlike any I'd ever encountered before. Its blade danced with an array of ever-changing colors, maintaining a tangible, solid state while emanating a soft, ethereal glow. The hilt was no less extraordinary, adorned with cryptic symbols that changed with the rhythm of the blade's colors. As I held it, the air around me seemed to hum with a strange, pulsing energy that made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. But it wasn't just its physical properties that attracted me to this artifact, no, the dagger embodied change and transformation, a symbol of the infinite cycle of alteration that governs the universe. It was a mystery to decipher, a question posed by the cosmos, promising knowledge and the ability to learn even more about this world. In that moment, I realized that I couldn't just leave this relic behind. It was a call to my insatiable curiosity and thirst for knowledge. With awe and reverence, I placed the glowing dagger among my possessions. The course of my journey had taken a fascinating turn, and I would definitely take the chance to examine this artifact when I return to Altdorf. For now, I'll keep heading my way. It gives me a bit of relief to know that at least now, I have a weapon in case I happen to need it. I kept on with my journey, making annotations here and there, making clever use of my supplies and trying not to call any unwanted attention. The desolate wastelands of this region can be deceiving, and more often than not, I get the feeling that I am being watched, or worse, that I am being hunted. Suddenly, not too far from the main road that was leading me north, I saw a towering creature, a giant in the wilderness. I felt a mixed sense of awe and apprehension, but I also understood that I had to go cautiously. Despite their appearance as slow thinkers, giants can be unpredictable, especially when agitated. Appreciating the giant in the distance was an awe-inspiring sight, a behemoth that towered over the tallest trees, its sheer size making it one of the most formidable creatures in this land. These are solitary creatures by nature, preferring the isolation of mountainous regions or dense wild forests. Their tough hide, weathered by the harsh conditions of their habitats, provides a formidable defense against most attacks. Yet it is known that for all their might, giants are simple beings. They possess an innocent curiosity about the world around them, albeit a curiosity that often leads to unintentional destruction due to their size. Their raw primal strength is unparalleled, capable of tearing down fortress walls or crushing entire units of soldiers with their gargantuan clubs. My journey into the north of the Badlands had taken me to the very essence of the wild, to a world where giants roamed and the unexpected was the only certainty. These journals are beginning to seem more and more like a collection of ever bigger, ever stranger creatures, and amongst the biggest of these lands is the feared Arachnarok spider. These are the true rulers of the dark forests of the world, and are rightfully worshipped by the forest goblin tribes. It is a nightmarish creature as large as a house, with a grotesque bloated body supported by 8 thick armored legs, large fangs, venom and mouthparts made to suck the liquid innards of their victims. I struggle to think of a more horrible way to be welcomed by more than being covered in webs and liquefied from the inside by the venom of these huge creatures. They are true bastions of life, having made the journey all the way from a hatchling of relatively small size into a behemoth that is ultimately predator of all things. Its victims include creatures such as giants, cygors, beastmen, and other foul creatures of the forests. The spider cult of the tribe's goblins used these beings in war, constructing ramshackle platforms atop their backs and filling it with way too many goblins, usually armed with spears and short bows. Many a fort and outpost have been overwhelmed by a raid of spider riders, who, when riding these massive beasts, pay no heed to minute things such as walls. The Arachnarok spider is a prime example of the dangerous and formidable creatures that inhabit the Badlands. But that doesn't mean they go around unchallenged. These lands are characterized by unending war. The constant flow of blood that determines who gets to eat and who gets to live in this unforgiving environment. I was witness as how a goblin tribe raiding giant Arachnarok spiders came under attack by an army of goblins riding Squigs. But what are these Squigs exactly? Let me tell you that these volatile yet remarkable creatures are a sight to behold. With their bulbous bodies, gaping maws filled with razor-sharp teeth, and the unpredictable nature of their movement, Squigs are a great representation of the chaotic way of life here in the Badlands. While their outward appearance may initially suggest mindless savagery, a closer inspection reveals a surprisingly intricate biological system. Their way of moving suggests an internal structure unlike anything I've encountered in traditional zoology. The way they metabolize food into raw, explosive energy, their incredible leaps, their adaptability to the harsh environment makes them a unique species to study. And from a vantage point on a rugged outcrop, I was witness to a savage battle that happened right before my eyes. Two goblin tribes, the Shadowfangs astride their Arachnarok spiders, and the Squeaky Jumpers on their bouncing Squigs, as they were gathering in force. With a deafening war cry, the Squeaky Jumpers struck first. Riding their Squigs, they bounded forward. In response, the Shadowfangs rallied atop their colossal Arachnarok spiders. Towering over the bouncing horde, the Arachnaroks moved with a calculated, deadly grace. The clash was as savage as it was swift. Squigs leapt with explosive force, crashing into the spider line. Goblins clashed, spears meeting in a cacophony of violence. Yet, the Arachnaroks stood firm, their chitinous bodies resisting the Squig-led assault, their massive legs and venomous fangs causing mayhem amongst the Squeaky Jumpers. Both tribes fought with savage ferocity. I would have liked to know what their true motives were. If it was a battle of vengeance, a showcase of pride and martial superiority, a fight for territory, or simply a matter of survival. I do wonder. Gradually, I saw as the tide of battle turned. The Arachnarok spiders, despite their slower pace, proved to be the stronger force. They pressed forward, their riders raining arrows and spears upon the enemy. The Squeaky Jumpers, despite their initial ferocity, began to waver, their lines breaking under the relentless onslaught. Hundreds and hundreds of goblins lost their lives in the aftermath. The Shadowfang tribe stood victorious as the dust settled, their Arachnarok spiders looming over the battlefield like triumphant titans of war. The scene was a brutal testament to the violent nature of life in the Badlands, and it reminded me that anything can go wrong in this place and that nowhere is safe. I took a glimpse to the hidden dagger I had found before, just making sure it was safe. I grabbed it and pressed it closer to my body. My experiences, however perilous they may be, are adding to the wealth of knowledge about this largely unexplored territory. As I continued my journey, every encounter, every discovery takes me one step closer to understanding the diverse tapestry of life that thrives amidst these harsh and unpredictable landscapes. As I delved deeper into the study of the creatures inhabiting the Badlands, an inexplicable pull began to tug at the corners of my mind. The desire to journey further, to venture into the unknown, was taking hold of me. My nights became a theatre of vivid dreams, showcasing a kaleidoscope of otherworldly landscapes, bizarre creatures and skies painted with colors beyond description. Knowledge, like a beacon, was calling me northwards, towards the most dangerous and mysterious regions of our world. The Chaos Wastes. I knew that to venture into the Chaos Wastes was to journey into the heart of uncertainty, where the very laws of nature hold little sway. The creatures of the Wastes are said to be far more formidable and strange than anything the Badlands could offer. Yet within this imminent danger lay a world ripe with unknown species, strange environments, and untapped knowledge. To me, Steffan Hoffman, Doctor of Biology and Zoology at the University of Nuln, the opportunity to observe and learn from this untamed realm was simply too enticing to resist. This strange mental journey was not a descent into madness, but rather an invitation to discovery. With this new resolve, I began to prepare for my journey. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with perils unknown and challenges unimaginable. But the allure of undiscovered knowledge, the thrill of the unknown, drives me forward. After a long journey from the Badlands, I found myself back at the familiar confines of my small house within the relatively safe borders of the Empire. A few weeks of relative peace had been a welcome respite for my weary body. The rain poured outside and I felt grateful to be back home, safe and with my belly full. Yet as I sat at my desk, bathed in the soft glow of the candles, I found my gaze constantly drifting towards the mysterious dagger I had found in the Badlands. There it lay, nestled among my collected artifacts, its iridescent blade shifting hues in a mesmerizing dance of light. I could almost hear its silent call, a siren song that resonated with a pull that was both enticing and disconcerting. The patterns of the hilt, ever shifting and changing, seemed to beckon me, whispering secrets of knowledge. A strange anticipation gripped me as I contemplated its allure. Was it possible that this artifact was guiding me? Or perhaps was I being lured into a path I may not fully comprehend? The more I examined the dagger, the more I felt a yearning, insatiable thirst for answers that had yet to be quenched. I knew then that I was being called to the north. The dagger was not just an artifact. It was a compass, a guide on a journey that I was destined to undertake. There is a reason why I found it there in the Badlands. My heart pounded in my chest. My mind whirled with thoughts and possibilities. I knew the road to the north would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. But whatever lay ahead, I was ready. The north was calling, and I would answer. With a deep breath, I began to make plans for my journey to the northern Chaos Wastes. As part of my preparations, I set out to meet Albrecht Eisenforst. a formidable warrior priest whom I had known for many years. His unwavering faith and devotion to Sigmar had always been a source of reassurance and guidance. As I approached him, his stern visage softened, and he greeted me with a warm embrace.
"Steffan,"
he began, his deep voice resonating with concern.
"I sense a great tumult within you. You tread on a dangerous path."
I nodded, acknowledging his insight. "I feel a pull towards the north, Albrecht," I confessed. "There's something there, an overwhelming lure that I cannot ignore. Not anymore." He was silent for a moment, before he reached into a small pouch at his waist. His hand emerged holding a small, gleaming pendant. It was a Sigmarite amulet, shaped into the twin-tailed comet, the holy symbol of Sigmar.
"Take this,"
he said, pressing the amulet into my palm. The weight of the holy metal felt substantial, its surface cool and smooth against my skin.
"Let it remind you of the faith you carry within, the divine light of Sigmar that will guide you even in the darkest of places."
The simplicity of his gesture was both humbling and empowering.
"Remember, Steffan,"
he continued,
"the lure of chaos is the test of one's conviction. Stand firm in your faith. Be steadfast in your purpose. The temptations you face are but illusions, and the strength to resist them comes from within. Remember, Steffan, hold on to your essence, your intentions for traveling there. Be certain that your love for the wildlife of the old world will overcome your lust for knowledge. I know you. You are a man who treated a wounded Razodon, even though your guide said not to. You are good at heart and strong of conviction. Chaos has nothing to offer you."
I closed my fingers around the amulet and nodded in a gesture of thankfulness. The certainty of Albrecht's words, the strength of his conviction, was contagious. It was a beacon of hope and determination, a light that I would carry with me to the reaches of the north. We spoke for almost an hour there, in the solitude of his chamber. I expressed him my concerns that the call to the north could be a trap from the ruinous powers. I am no fool, and as much as I enjoy acquiring knowledge, this time it felt different. In Albrecht, I saw a friend that could understand me, and as I spoke to him, I knew I had done right to pay him a visit. As I thanked him and prepared to depart, I knew that I would carry his words and the weight of the amulet close to my heart. As I stepped out of the ecclesiastical halls, the familiar sights and sounds of the busy city washed over me. The bustle of the marketplace, vibrant and humming with life, felt like a comforting embrace, a piece of the familiar before I would step into the unknown. The marketplace was teeming with the colors of richly hued textiles, the glinting of metals and the freshest of fruits. The stalls overflowed with goods, and the air filled with the clamor of sellers hawking their wares. I moved along the throng, stopping here and there to pick up provisions for my journey. Fresh bread from the baker, some dried meats and fruits, and other utilities. As I moved, the friendly banter of the sellers, the clink of coins, and the mouth-watering aroma of cooking food painted a tableau of life that was incredibly grounding. In the midst of all this, I felt a swell of gratitude for this place, for these people, and for the life that had led me to this point. As a biologist and a zoologist, the prospect of discovering new creatures, of gaining unprecedented knowledge about the world, was invigorating. I stood there for a moment, taking in the tapestry of city life. Suddenly a thought, unbidden, crept into my mind. Could I perhaps find peace in such a setting after my journey north? The town square was a kaleidoscope of everyday life. so different from the isolated, perilous terrains I usually ventured into. The allure of retirement, of leaving behind a constant pursuit of knowledge for a more tranquil life, was a thought that had never struck me before. Yet, as I stood in the marketplace watching life unfold, the idea seemed not just conceivable, but oddly enticing. I found my gaze drifting over the people going about their lives. Merchants calling out their goods, children playing between the stalls, elderly folk sharing stories on a bench. Shaking my head slightly, as if to clear it, I turned my gaze to the north. There were still mysteries to uncover, truths to learn. The idea of retirement could wait. For now, the call for the unknown was louder, its allure more potent. It's been a few days now, and thank Sigmar, my travels have been smooth so far, I thought as I continued my journey north of the Empire. I was now going to the snowy landscape of Kislev, and the cold wind welcomed me as I entered the city gates. Kislev was both unusual and intimidating, with hard people and harder winters. However, it was the entrance to the north, and the final bastion of civilization before the wild and uncharted lands that lay ahead. I knew that venturing further would be perilous, and I had no intention of taking such risks lightly. As a biologist, my expertise lay in observation and study, not combat. I needed protection, a band of skilled fighters who knew the North, who could guide me and defend me should the need arise. A contact had given me the name of a reputable mercenary guild within Kislev. Navigating through the maze of streets, I found myself outside a worn building. Inside, the guild was a whirl of activity. I approached the guildmaster, a burly man with a battle-worn face. We discussed my needs, my destination, the potential dangers, and, of course, the price to pay. He listened, his eyes sharp, measuring, then nodded and summoned a small group of mercenaries. Their faces were lined with experience. They were a motley crew of hardened veterans that had traveled north more than once. I introduced myself to them as Dr. Steffan Hoffman, biologist and zoologist from the University of Nuln, a piece of information that seemed to surprise them. To see a man like me in this land of hard winters, sturdy warriors and wild beasts. As I inspected the group of mercenaries that would be accompanying me north, one of them caught my eye. Among the rugged and battle-hardened faces, there was one that seemed oddly familiar. A man of average height, his features neither particularly striking nor plain, yet something about him stirred a recognition deep within me. I tried to place him, to connect his face with a memory or a moment from my past, but it was like grasping at smoke. "We'll take you north, Doctor," the leader of the mercenaries finally said. "But be warned, it's no place for the faint-hearted. The winds there carry more than just cold." I knew what he meant. The far north was not just a place of physical danger. It was a land where the very fabric of reality seemed to waver, where the powers of chaos danced and beckoned. I felt a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the weather. As we made our final preparations, I couldn't help but steal glances at the familiar stranger, for the lack of a better name, trying to uncover the mystery that lay behind his familiar face. He was a man of age, his face marked by the passage of time. Yet his presence radiated a vigor that belied his years. He seemed to sense my scrutiny, his eyes meeting mine once or twice, a knowing look in them that only deepened the mystery. The dagger, ever present at my side, seemed to shimmer with a new intensity, its colors shifting and swirling as if echoing my unsettled thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that the path I was on was more complex and intertwined than I could fathom, and that the man with a familiar face was a key to something I had yet to understand. The activity in Kislev was behind us now as we made our way deeper into Troll country, and I couldn't help but be fascinated by the grotesque beauty that lay before us. The skies were often overcast, with dark, threatening clouds that promised snow or freezing rain. But it was the abundance of trolls that truly marked Troll country as a place apart. The creatures seemed to be everywhere, lurking in caves, hiding behind boulders, and often simply wandering the landscape. Their foul stench was a constant reminder of their presence. The Chaos Trolls were also present in this place, twisted aberrations that bore the unmistakable mark of the Dark Gods. Their flesh was warped and mutated, often bearing grotesque growths or unnatural appendages. Their eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence. As a biologist, I was drawn to study these creatures, to understand the forces that had shaped them into such monstrous forms. But I was also acutely aware of the danger they posed. Our mercenaries were on constant alert, their eyes scanning the terrain for any sign of any approaching troll, or any other lurking danger. As we continued our trek northward, a sudden rustle in the sky caught my attention. I looked up to see the unmistakable silhouette of a manticore, its powerful wings beating against the cold wind as it surveyed the ground below. The manticore is a truly magnificent but terrifying beast, combining the features of a lion, a dragon, and a scorpion. Its body is strong and muscular, covered with coarse fur, and its face is a nightmarish fusion of feline and human features. Its eyes are filled with malice and a wild intelligence. But it's the tail that is perhaps the manticore's most fearsome feature. Long and serpentine, it ends in a venomous stinger capable of striking with incredible speed and accuracy, making it a deadly weapon. Manticores are known to be highly aggressive and territorial, attacking anything that dares to enter their domain. Their roar is a deafening sound, and their powerful jaws can crush bones with ease. As a biologist, I found myself both horrified and fascinated by this creature. Its very existence seemed to defy nature, a chaotic amalgamation of different animals that somehow formed a coherent whole. Suddenly, and before we had time to react, it was upon us, swooping down from the sky with talons outstretched, eyes ablaze with predatory fury. One of the mercenaries was struck down immediately, his scream cut short as the manticore's jaws closed around him. Panic and chaos reigned as we scrambled to defend ourselves. I found myself frozen for a moment, caught between horror and fascination as I watched the manticore's brutal assault. But the cries of pain and the sound of weapons being fired snapped me back to reality. The attack was intense, but it ended as quickly as it started. 2 other mercenaries were wounded, one severely, as the creature's stinger lashed out. But as the hired arms fought back, the manticore's roars of anger turned to cries of pain, and it was wounded several times. I could see that the creature was beaten, that it was retreating, and I raised my hand, calling for the mercenaries to cease their attack. But my pleas were ignored, as the leader shouted orders to continue firing, bringing the creature down. I watched in dismay as the magnificent creature crashed to the ground, its life extinguished. Its eyes were now dull and lifeless. A creature of wonder and terror was gone, reduced to a mere trophy. The mercenaries cheered briefly, celebrating their victory, but I felt a hollow emptiness inside. I turned to the captain, anger and frustration welling up within me. "Why?" I demanded. "It was retreating! There was no need to kill it!" The mercenary leader replied to me that it was a necessary kill, that it attacked us and we defended ourselves. "That's the way of the world," he added, his face hard and unyielding. I shook my head, unable to accept his logic. The Manticore was a living being, a part of the wild and untamed nature of the North. Its death was a tragedy, not a triumph. The familiar-faced mercenary caught my eye, and I saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. He too seemed to recognize the senselessness of the kill. We moved on, not too long after, leaving the Manticore's body behind. The thrill of discovery was tainted by the harsh reality of survival, but I remained resolute. The journey had to continue. Only a few days later, we were moving through unforgiving lands. The further we ventured into the brutal lands of Norsca, the more unrelenting and grim the environment became. The wind, once just a biting chill, now carried with it a palpable sense of corruption. The climate itself was a relentless enemy, an ever-present foe that sought to break us down with its cold, icy fury. Snowstorms raged without warning, blinding us and tearing at our all-too-human flesh. Even the mercenaries, hardened warriors all, were affected. Their laughter and camaraderie gave way to silence and suspicion, their faces drawn and pale. As we continued our journey through the rugged and desolate terrain of Norsca, we all heard distant roars and the unmistakable sound of drums. The mercenaries tightened their grips on their weapons, eyes darting, senses alert. As we crested a snow-covered hill, the source of the disturbance came into view. A vast and barbaric force. Norscans, warriors corrupted by chaos, marching to war. Savage cries and guttural chants filled the air as they moved in a cacophony of sound that spoke of violence and bloodlust. I could see their war totems, dreadful symbols of their allegiance. They were on the move, their purpose clear, but their destination unknown. But worst of all were the beasts that accompanied them. Twisted and mutated creatures that were as varied as they were terrifying, each bearing marks of chaos and corruption. Towering above the warriors were the mammoths, monstrous beasts that seemed to, in a way, defy nature. Their tusks were long, their hides mottled and scarred, bound in heavy armor and bearing war platforms on their backs. They were weapons of war, controlled through cruel means, and driven forward with bloodlust through the cold terrain. To see such an otherwise magnificent creature in this state was devastating to me, and in a way I could not comprehend how fellow humans would do these terrible things to these mammoths. My eyes moved along the army, looking for more. Stalking among the ranks were the Chaos Giants, massive and deformed creatures whose very presence struck terror into the hearts of normal men. Their bodies were huge, twisted and grotesque, covered in tumors and growths, limbs mismatched and faces contorted into permanent snarls. They swung massive clubs, each step causing the earth to tremble and the ice to crack. Advancing alongside the marching force were the wolves, not ordinary beasts, but creatures touched by chaos. Larger and more vicious than natural wolves, their eyes glowed with malice, and their fangs seemed ready to tear flesh. Their howls were a haunting melody, a song of death that echoed through the frozen landscape. Also, slithering among the warriors were strange creatures, known as the Famir, enigmatic and loathsome beings. One-eyed and hunched, their bodies a fusion of reptile and humanoid. They moved with an unsettling grace, their tails whipping, their voices whispering dark incantations. Their magic was a thing of shadows and deceit, and their presence added an air of mystery and dread to the horde. Each of these creatures was a living embodiment of darkness, being transformed by the will of the dark gods and the corruption that flowed into the world. As I watched in horror at all these monstrosities, the dagger commanded my attention. Its humming had grown louder, more insistent, a vibration that resonated in my very soul. I suddenly realized that my hand was gripping it as if trying to calm the mysterious weapon. I held it in my hand, feeling its weight, its energy, its connection to this place. It was calling to me, guiding me, pulling me towards knowledge, a truth that I needed to uncover. The Sigmarite amulet around my neck was a steady presence, a grounding force that kept me anchored to my faith, my purpose. But even its strength seemed to wane before the power of the dagger. The promise of knowledge was at hand, a unique opportunity that destiny presented to me. Why shouldn't I take it? I made up my mind. I signaled the mercenary leader to move along. He nodded, knowing I was right. We had seen enough. The Norscan horde was a force we had no desire to draw the attention of. With one last glance at the marching warriors, we turned and continued our journey, leaving the savagery and madness of the Norscans behind. The chaos wastes awaited, and with them, the true test of our journey. We were now on the edge of the world, the boundary where the familiar ended and the inexplicable began. We had lost another mercenary on the way. He could not bear the harsh climate and simply did not wake up one day. The group was weary by now, and I had started to struggle keeping up with the pace. The climate itself was a thing of madness. Winds howled with the voices of tormented souls, whipping up storms that bore no pattern, no season. A sense of dread pervaded the air, a feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking our progress. The land itself seemed to writhe and twist, shapes moving in the periphery of our vision, only to vanish when we looked directly at them. Floating rocks bore the faces of leering demons, their mouths open in silent laughter at our plight. I knew that we were at the edge of the world, and going further would only assure our deaths. I needed to find what exactly had brought me here. The Sigmarite amulet around my neck was a constant weight, a reminder of my faith and the promises I had made. But through it all, the dagger called to me. I knew that I had come too far to turn back now, that the answers I sought were within my grasp, that the path I had chosen was the only one that mattered. I looked to the horizon, grasping for answers. I looked to the skies, searching for a clue, but it was the dagger in my pocket that ultimately caught my attention once again. The weapon was shaking, as if it were a living thing, desperate to break free. Its hum had grown into a wail that echoed in my mind. I grabbed it tightly, my fingers wrapped around its hilt. my entire being focused on calming its fury, on trying to understand what the dagger demanded of me. I tightened my hand around it, and then all changed. From the twisted landscape, from the fractured sky, from the very fabric of reality itself, they came. Demons. Creatures of nightmare. Beings of pure malice. Manifestations of the darkest aspects of existence. They burst forth in a torrent of madness, their forms a blur of claws and teeth and eyes, their voices a cacophony of terror, their presence an abomination. These were things I'd never seen before, unnatural things that should not exist. Yet there they were, clawing at us. The mercenaries were caught off guard, their weapons raised in an attempt to fend off the onslaught, their faces etched with horror and disbelief. The captain barked orders, his voice drowned out by the roar of the Neverborn. The men fought bravely, killing many of those abominations, but also suffering many casualties that were mounting up fast. I stood in the midst of the chaos, the dagger still in my hand, its energy pulsating through my veins, when I saw an injured creature, its twisted form staggering toward me with malevolent intent in his eyes. The mercenaries were engaged in their own life or death struggles, and I was alone. I had never taken a life before, but now I had no choice. A necessary kill, I thought, my heart pounding in my chest. I tightened my grip on the dagger. Time seemed to slow as I stepped forward, my arm thrusting the blade into the creature's vile flesh. It shrieked in agony, its twisted body convulsing before collapsing into the ground. The battle raged on, but in that moment, I was lost in a world of my own. The sudden realization that I had just taken a life shocked me more than I expected. Even though I knew that it was a creature that I needed to kill, something just seemed off for me. Suddenly, I felt a hit on the back of my head that connected with a sickening crunch, and pain exploded through my skull. The world spun, the darkness overtook me, and all was silent. I was abruptly elsewhere, walking alone in an unfamiliar, seemingly frozen wasteland. The biting chill should have pierced through me, but I felt nothing. It was as if I were immune to the cold, detached from the very world around me. The landscape was barren, twisted and unnatural, yet amidst this desolation, a singular sight caught my eye. A flower, impossibly vibrant and alive, was growing in a place where life should not exist. Its delicate petals were a stark contrast to the bleak surroundings. As I approached, the flower seemed to dance and shimmer as if greeting me. As I touched the flower, the world shifted once more. Suddenly the icy wastes were replaced by a landscape so alien yet strangely comforting. The mysterious mercenary who had seemed so oddly familiar earlier was standing before me, a knowing smile on his weathered face. I stared at him in disbelief, suddenly recognizing and remembering his features. "Lazarus?" I asked, hesitating. Lazarus nodded with a smile on his face.
"I am here, Steffan, looking for the same thing as you are,"
he declared, his voice resonant and calming. "Lazarus," I stammered, recognition slowly dawning. "From the University of Nuln, all those years ago." He nodded, his eyes twinkling with wisdom and understanding.
"Indeed, Steffan. It has been a long time. But I have been watching you. I have something to show you. Something you will be most interested in.
Oh, I was still reeling from the shock, but his presence was strangely comforting, almost guiding. As he began to walk, I found myself following, drawn by a curiosity that had always been my driving force. The surroundings were indistinct, shifting and changing, yet I felt no fear or uncertainty. We continued to walk, and soon Lazarus stopped, pointing to something up ahead. As we approached, I saw what seemed to be an impossibility. A predator and its natural prey coexisting peacefully. My eyes widened. Lazarus, what is this? How can this be? I asked, astonished.
Steffan, what you see here are symbiotic anomalies. The flower in a place it shouldn't be. Predator and prey peacefully coexisting. They are just examples of life's grand pattern, where two species that should be at odds have evolved to coexist.
As he spoke, I began to understand the profound truth to his words. The grand pattern of life, as he called it, governed all beings.
The grand pattern of life is the key to all existence, Steffan.
Lazarus continued, his voice filled with reverence.
It's what binds us all together, allowing life to flourish in the most unexpected ways. It is a force that can even transcend the barriers between species, creating harmonious relationships, where otherwise there would be conflict.
I was mesmerized by his words, seeing the world in a new light. The predator and prey coexisting peacefully were more than just rare phenomena. They were a manifestation of something greater, a deeper understanding of life itself. We stood there, gazing at the anomalies, and I felt a profound connection to everything around me. The realization that I was part of something so much larger filled me with awe and wonder. I knew then that my journey to the north was about more than just curiosity. It was about discovering the essence of life itself.
You see now, Steffan, everything is connected. Everything has a purpose. Your journey, your discoveries, even the dagger you found, they are all part of the grand pattern. Embrace it, understand it, and you will find all the knowledge that you seek.
His words resonated with me, and I knew that he was right.
Steffan, do you remember the manticore? The one that attacked you and your group?
A pang of guilt hit me as the image of the magnificent beast's lifeless body flashed in my mind. I nodded, unable to speak.
With the knowledge of the grand pattern of life, you could have saved it.
Lazarus continued, his voice gentle but firm.
You could have understood its fears, its needs, and calmed it, tamed it even. There would have been no necessity to kill.
The realization that I could have prevented the death of that creature, that I could have connected with it on a level that transcended mere instinct and fear, was enlightening.
You see, Steffan, with this understanding, you would never have to use a dagger or any other weapon to take a life ever again. You will be able to connect with all the creatures that inhabit this world, understand them, empathize with them. You could be their guardian, their protector.
I looked at Lazarus, my mind reeling with the possibilities. As a biologist and zoologist, the opportunity to truly understand the creatures I had studied all my life was beyond tempting. But how? I finally asked, my voice trembling with excitement and uncertainty. How can I learn to see the grand pattern of life as you do? Lazarus smiled as he looked at me, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. The air around us grew colder as I pressed Lazarus, the thirst for knowledge he spoke of consuming me. Lazarus, how can I obtain this understanding, this connection to the grand pattern of life? I asked.
You seek something extraordinary, Steffan.
He began, his voice now carrying a strange, almost hypnotic cadence.
A level of understanding that goes beyond mere study and observation. A communion with the natural world that transcends the barriers of flesh and mind. And it's already within you. You just need to open your mind. Embrace the connection. Embrace the grand pattern of life as it reveals itself to you.
I nodded eagerly, leaning closer, captivated by his words.
To attain this,
Lazarus continued, his eyes locked on mine.
You must be willing to make a sacrifice. You must give something of yourself, something that binds you to the mortal world, that keeps you from seeing the great pattern of life.
A chill ran down my spine, but I couldn't look away. His words were like a spell, drawing me in. What must I sacrifice? I whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer.
Your memories and your faith. They are anchors to your past. To grasp the grand pattern of life, to truly understand the world and its creatures, you must become a vessel, unburdened by the weight of what you have been. All you need to do is relinquish your being. The new knowledge requires purity of thought, untouched by mortal biases and beliefs. Will you make this sacrifice, my dear Steffan?
The cold words lingered in the air, Lazarus's offer echoing in my mind. A choice was before me, a path into unknown knowledge and the mastery of life's grand pattern. But the sacrifice demanded were my memories, my faith, all that I had ever been. But in that surreal moment, it seemed almost reasonable. My hand instinctively reached for the amulet around my neck, the Sigmarite emblem, a reassuring weight. Suddenly I remembered the words that my warrior priest friend, Albrecht Eisenfrost, had spoken to me before I departed.
Remember, Steffan, the lure of chaos is the test of one's conviction. Stand firm in your faith. Be steadfast in your purpose. The temptations you face are but illusions, and the strength to resist them comes from within. Remember, Steffan, hold on to your essence, your intentions for traveling there. Be certain that your love for the wildlife of the old world will overcome your lust for knowledge. I know you. You are a man who treated a wounded Razodon, even though your guide said not to. You are good at heart and strong of conviction. Chaos has nothing to offer you.
I began to think of the world I knew and loved, the predators and prey, the balance of life's grand design. There was an order to things, a harmony that had its own beauty. To disrupt it would be an affront to nature itself, a violation of everything I had come to understand and respect over the years. Finally, a truth emerged. a realization that struck at the core of my being. I loved the adventure, the journey itself, the sense of discovery, the wonder of exploring and understanding the creatures of the world. To have all the answers handed to me would rob me of my purpose, my drive, my joy. I am Steffan Hoffman, Doctor of Biology and Zoology. I knew right then who I was, what I loved and what I stood for. No, I said, my voice firm and filled with conviction. I cannot do this. Lazarus's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something dark and insidious passing through them.
Then let me show you what will come to pass if you refuse this precious knowledge.
The world around me seemed to warp and twist. Suddenly, I was on top of an impossibly high hill, witnessing a vision of horror and despair. The end of the world loomed before me. Chaos reigning supreme as civilizations crumbled and fell. Fire and destruction danced across the lands, and at the center of it all was a figure of pure terror. The ever-chosen of chaos, the three-eyed king, heralding an apocalypse that was yet to come. The screams of the dying filled my ears, the stench of decay overwhelming my senses. It was a nightmare beyond comprehension, a future filled with agony and despair. Lazarus's voice was in my ear.
These are the end times, Steffan. And it is what awaits every living being if this world continues on its current path. You have a unique opportunity to change this. Only through understanding the grand pattern of life can this be averted. Accept the knowledge, Steffan. Embrace it. And save them all.
The temptation was there, the weight of the world's future bearing down on me. But something within me held firm. I looked at the distraction, the suffering, and I knew that this was not my path. I had my faith, my understanding of the world, and my love for discovery. Chaos had shown me its face, and I would not bow to it. No, I said again, my voice resolute. I will not be swayed. This is not my way. Lazarus's face was twisted with anger and frustration, but it was clear that he had lost. I had resisted the allure of chaos, held firm to my convictions, and remained true to myself. The vision faded, the world suddenly deforming and snapping back to the harsh reality of the chaos wastes. As I grasped for air, recovering my senses, I found myself clutching the Sigmarite amulet with such force that my hand ached. Of the dagger, there was no sign. Gone as if it had never been. Of Lazarus, there was also no sign. His presence evaporated like a wisp of smoke. My eyes took in the battlefield, the slain bodies of strange creatures scattered among the fallen mercenaries. It was a scene of grim triumph, a battle won, but at a terrible cost. A strong hand grabbed my arm, and I turned to find a dwarf looking at me with concern. His eyes were filled with wisdom of experience. He was bloodied, but his voice was gentle.
Glad to see you were alive, you mad lad. You shouldn't be wandering this far north. We fought off the few creatures that remained, but you seem to need food and medicine. We'll take care of you while we take you back home, back to civilization.
The world is a place of wonder and horror, and I had glimpsed both in my quest for knowledge. But in the end, I had held firm to my beliefs, resisted the allure of chaos, and come out stronger for it. As our wagon creaked and jostled on a southbound road, my thoughts wandered to the comfort of home. I could almost feel the warm embrace of my city, its familiar streets, and the welcoming faces of friends. In my mind, I savored the first bite of a hot, freshly baked loaf of bread and the rich aroma of a well-cooked meal. The journey had taken its toll, and the simple pleasures of life had never seemed so luxurious. But more than anything, I looked forward to finally trying Bugman's beer. Its fame had spread far and wide, and I had promised myself that taste upon my return. I could almost hear the clink of the tankard, feel the froth on my lips, and taste the rich, complex flavors dancing on my tongue. The journey would continue. More challenges would surely come. But I knew who I was and what I believed in. The ruinous powers had tried to claim me, but I had faced them and emerged unbroken. And so the grand pattern of life would remain a mystery. But it was a mystery I would continue to explore, with wonder, excitement, and a heart uncorrupted. I am Steffan Hoffman, Doctor of Biology and Zoology of the University of Nuln, and this has been my journey so far.